Welcome back to the video lecture on East Asia's cultural influence on the law of the sea. This time, it's about Northeast Asian perspective on international law, the contemporary issues and challenges. Since the end of the Cold War, the Northeast Asia have been one of the most dynamic and dangerous parts of the world. Encompassing the People's Republic of China, North and South Korea and Japan, the region has undoubtedly taken on greater the global geopolitical and economic significance. The region is now home to two of the three largest economies, the China and Japan in the world, and with the inclusion of the South Korea, account for about 20% of the global gross domestic product. With the exception of the North Korea, all of the countries in the region experienced, or in the case of China, the currently experiencing rapid economic development that has resulted in Northeast Asia accounting for 1/5 of the world production, 1/6 of the world trade, and about 1/2 of the world foreign currency reserves. This great economic transformation is accompanied by the tremendous political forces that animate the region. During the early part of the 21st century, the Northeast Asia has been China's ascendancy from regional hegemon to a global power, thus challenging the United States and the European Union. The region has experienced tensions over nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula. There is a more open talk about possibility of Korean unification and its prospects for the region. Japan has made clear that it desired to validate itself as a legitimate international leader with the permanent seat on the U.S. Security Council, yet there continued to be the intriguing the impact of the old conflicts between Japan and her neighbors, and they continue to shape the character and vulnerabilities of the relations between the Northeast Asian states. Consequently, the popular narratives of the contemporary Northeast Asia are often described in a context of the political economy of rapid industrialization or from the point of view of international relations in light of the global balance of power and called the fault line between the actors in the region. The dramatic economic growth of Japan and Korea during the latter half of the 20th century and the Chinese economy's meteoric rise in this century has been well documented and researched. Northeast Asia has also been the focus of much study in relation to the geopolitical climate of the Cold War in a context of the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union. While economists and political scientists have made great contributions to study of the region and its modern history, a frequently overlooked area of study is the function and impact of the international law on the relations of countries in the region. Indeed, the argument that is being made in the pages of this lecture is that international law has an important, if somewhat muted role, since it was introduced to the region by the West in the 19th century up through the period of the Cold War. It has taken on a more significant role in the post-Cold War era, reflecting the dynamics of the region and the prospect for the establishing an order based upon the international legal principles. The growing importance of international Northeast Asia can be attributed in large part to the focus of globalization that has brought about fundamental changes in the economic, political, and cultural spheres. Broadly defined, the phenomenon of globalization describes a process of the integration that has come to dominate the latter half of the 20th century as continued to shape the world today. Although globalization encompasses both political and cultural activities, it is most well defined in a popular discourse of what is commonly known as the global economy. This economic globalization is identified the global production as demonstrated by multinational corporations having the capacity to locate and relocate mode of production to different parts of the world in the search for markets and low cost. A trade liberalization as state has moved together to embrace the free trade through the multilateral agreements like the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, and finally, through the relative free movement of finance capital, where the global economic landscape is dotted by global capital market, as world financial centers like New York and London are those in Northeast Asia such as Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Seoul that are becoming the principal players in a new supranational order. An economic globalization has progressed. National boundary has become more permissible to the influx and outflow of the capital as well as the goods and services. In the case of the capital, it has flowed more freely due to the liberalization of the national and international financial markets and the introduction of the noble principle, the financial products and the services, as well as the facilitation of financial investments in foreign markets through upgraded technological innovations and the presence of the powerful new investors. For goods and services, the push for the successful completion of the Uruguay round, resulting in the ratification of the GATT and GATS, and the eventual creation of the World Trade Organization, WTO, has brought about momentous changes in the way trade is conducted between states. Borders are becoming more porous to non-domestic products and services. In Northeast Asia, the depth and breadth of the globalization's impact in the region can be seen through the growing and deepening economic linkage between all three countries. While the United States was Japan and South Korea's largest trading partner at the end of the 20th century, it has now been replaced by China. Recently, China, Japan, and Korea has made increasing efforts to bring about creation of a free trade bloc and have openly called for a drafting of free trade agreements that would bring about a new legal order in the region. It is under these conditions that international law is posed to take a greater role in bringing about greater regional cooperation and integration through a formal institutionalization of these trade and investment relationships. However, despite movement toward greater interdependence and the creation of a regional economic bloc, the region is also the sources of the serious political tensions that have their roots in ancient and recent history. In contrast to the European, the Westphalian system of state sovereignty, interstate relationships in Northeast Asia trace their origin to the tributary system established and maintained by various Chinese empires, in which power was centered in Imperial China, and where tributary state in Japan and Korea took part in later the obeisance to Celestial the empire. While it is understood that the tributary state maintained relative independence in relation to the Chinese empire, it was clear that interstate relations were viewed in the context of the Chinese imperial and cultural hegemony. While the wane and eventual collapse of the Chinese empire and the epochal events that marked the West's engagement with Northeast Asia, the passing of the world order gave rise to Japan's rise and eventual recognition of Japan by the West as a legitimate sovereign power. The region then experienced a communist revolution in China and Japanese expansion into the Asian continent through Korea and into parts of China and South Asia in the first half of the 20th century. With Japan's defeat in World War II, there was a reordering of the Northeast Asian order, which saw the establishment of the independent states under the influence of both the United States and Soviet Union, which was exemplified by the division of the Korean Peninsula into North and South Korea, marking the beginning of the Cold War. Due to the regional balance of the power configuring during the Cold War, there was a very limited official contact between Japan and South Korea with China and North Korea. The Northeast Asian relations were defined in terms of the broader tensions between the United States and Soviet Union. Historically then, the interstate relations in Northeast Asia were based not on international legal principles of sovereign state and state equality, but are rather largely subject to politics of hegemony in the form of either the Chinese tributary system, Japanese imperialism, or Cold War politics. Thus, it was not until the end of the Cold War and the flourishing of globalization have the countries in the region engaged each other on common issues of the interest and have interacted with each other on the basis of the modern principle of international law. As a result, regional problems that lay dormant during the Cold War, such as human rights concerns and the law of the sea issues of the maritime delimitation, and access to ocean resources like fisheries and other non-security matters have raised the profile of international law. While geopolitical factors continue to be relevant in understanding interstate relations in the region, international law and its attendant principles have become the basis through which the most Northeast Asian states engage each other. The increasingly important role of the international law in Northeast Asia cannot be ignored in attempting to paint a complete picture of the international relations of the region. Indeed, it is hoped by the international lawyers in Northeast Asia that international law will bring about a greater regional cooperation and integration as seen in other regions of the world. Thank you very much for your attention.